Have you ever noticed the moment you stop reacting is often the moment they finally start paying attention? Think about that because the greatest shift in your life doesn't begin when they change, it begins when you do. The hardest habit to break after rejection isn't loving someone, it's reacting to everything they do. A delayed reply feels personal, a cold message ruins your entire day, a social media post keeps you awake at night. You begin measuring your happiness by someone else's attention, and without realizing it, you've handed over the steering wheel of your life. But here's the truth: the person who controls your emotions controls your direction. Read that again in your mind. The person who controls your emotions controls your direction. That's why so many people stay stuck after a breakup. Not because they can't move forward, but because every notification, every memory, every silence, and every small action from the other person continues to decide how they feel. One good text makes them hopeful, one ignored message makes them miserable, one social media story sends them into overthinking. That isn't love, that's emotional dependence. Now imagine something different. Imagine waking up one morning and deciding that today your peace will no longer depend on what someone else does. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes. You don't wonder who they're talking to. You don't rush to explain yourself. You don't feel the need to win every argument. Instead, you simply breathe. You go to the gym. You focus on work. You spend time with people who genuinely value you. You begin investing in your future instead of obsessing over your past. At first, it feels strange, almost uncomfortable. Your mind keeps telling you to react. Send one more message. Explain yourself. Tell them how much they hurt you. But every time you resist that impulse, something incredible happens. You become stronger than the emotion trying to control you. That's real confidence. Confidence isn't speaking the loudest. Confidence is remaining calm when your emotions are begging you to react. Think of a mountain during a storm. The wind screams, the rain crashes, lightning strikes. But the mountain doesn't argue with the storm, it simply remains where it is. That's the kind of strength you should aim for. Life will bring emotional storms. People will misunderstand you. Some will leave. Some will disappoint you. Some will never appreciate your value. But your job isn't to react to every storm. Your job is to remain grounded while it passes. Here's what many people don't realize: when you constantly react, you become predictable. Your emotions become easy to influence. But when you become calm, when you stop chasing, when you stop proving, people suddenly notice something different. They wonder why you're no longer seeking their approval. They notice your absence instead of your anxiety. Not because you're playing games, because you've finally stopped playing against yourself. And that's where your power returns. The moment you stop reacting, you stop giving away pieces of yourself. You stop allowing someone else's choices to define your mood. You stop living from notification to notification. Instead, you begin living according to your own purpose. That's when self respect quietly replaces desperation. That's when confidence replaces fear. That's when your comeback truly begins. Because your silence isn't about making someone else wake up, it's about finally waking yourself up. One of the greatest ironies in human nature is that people often don't recognize value while it's consistently available. When someone is always there, always answering the phone, always sending the first message, always forgiving, always making time, that consistency slowly becomes expected instead of appreciated. It's not always because people are cruel. Sometimes it's simply because familiarity hides value. Think about something as simple as electricity. You rarely stop to appreciate it while it's working. You flip a switch and the light comes on. You charge your phone without thinking twice. It's part of your everyday life, but the moment the power goes out, everything changes. Suddenly you realize how valuable it always was. Relationships often follow the same pattern. When you're constantly giving your attention, your kindness, your patience, and your emotional energy, the other person may stop noticing the effort behind it. Not because those qualities aren't valuable, but because they've become part of the background. Then one day, you stop reacting, you stop chasing, you stop trying to convince someone to choose you, and something unexpected happens. The silence creates space, not empty space, thinking space. For the first time, they experience life without the comfort of knowing you'll always be there. That's when questions begin to appear. I wonder what he's doing. Why isn't he reaching out? Has he finally moved on? Did I underestimate him? Notice something important. Those questions don't appear because you forced them. They appear because your energy is no longer available on demand. This isn't about using silence as a trick. If you're pretending not to care while secretly waiting every minute for a response, you're still emotionally trapped. Real change happens when your attention genuinely shifts toward your own life. Imagine a man who used to spend every evening checking his phone. Now he spends those evenings learning a new skill. He used to refresh social media dozens of times. Now he's reading books that improve his future. He used to wait for someone else's message before feeling happy. Now he's creating goals that give him purpose every single day. His energy hasn't disappeared, it's simply been redirected. And that's where the transformation begins. People notice changes long before they hear about them. Confidence has a presence, peace has a presence, purpose has a presence. When you're no longer desperately trying to be seen, you often become more noticeable than ever before. Why? Because confidence doesn't chase attention, it naturally attracts respect. Here's another truth that many people overlook. If someone only notices your value after you've stopped giving everything, don't make their realization the center of your story. Your goal isn't to make someone regret losing you. Your goal is to become someone who never abandons himself again. Whether they wake up tomorrow or next year or never, your mission stays exactly the same. Keep building, keep growing, keep protecting your peace because the greatest reward isn't watching someone finally recognize your worth. The greatest reward is recognizing it yourself. The moment you understand your own value, something powerful changes inside you. You stop negotiating your standards. You stop explaining your worth. You stop trying to earn love by sacrificing your dignity. Instead, you become the kind of person whose presence is appreciated because it is no longer given without purpose. And that's when the entire dynamic changes. Not because you demanded respect, but because you quietly became someone impossible to take for granted. One of the biggest mistakes people make after rejection is believing they still have one more argument to win, one more message to send, one more explanation to give, one more chance to prove they were right. But every emotional reaction keeps you connected to the very thing you're trying to escape. Every angry reply, every late night paragraph, every desperate attempt to be understood, every time you replay the same conversation in your head, you're feeding the past while starving your future. Ask yourself something honestly. How much energy have you spent trying to change someone else's mind? Now imagine if all of that energy had been invested somewhere else. What if every hour spent overthinking had been spent learning a new skill? What if every emotional breakdown had become another workout? What if every sleepless night had become another step toward building your dream? Your life would look completely different. That's why the strongest people don't spend their lives trying to control other people's choices. They control where their own energy goes. Think about a campfire. The fire only keeps burning if you continue adding wood. The moment you stop feeding it, the flames slowly disappear. Drama works exactly the same way. Arguments survive because someone keeps reacting. Conflict grows because someone keeps responding emotionally. Pain keeps repeating because someone refuses to let go. The moment you stop feeding the fire, it begins to lose its power over you. This doesn't mean pretending you were never hurt, it doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. Real strength isn't ignoring pain. Real strength is refusing to let pain decide your future. Imagine two men experiencing the exact same breakup. The first man spends the next 6 months trying to understand every little detail. He watches old videos, he rereads conversations, he checks her social media before going to sleep. His body is in the present, but his mind lives in yesterday. Now, imagine the second man. He hurts just as deeply, he misses her too. But every time his emotions tell him to chase, he chooses something different. He goes for a run, he opens a book, he works an extra hour, he calls a friend, he learns something new. He invests in himself instead of investing in regret. Slowly, almost without noticing, his confidence begins returning, not because someone apologized, not because someone came back, because he finally remembered that his future deserved more attention than his past. That's the shift that changes everything. People often believe success comes from one huge decision. It rarely does. Success is built through hundreds of small choices nobody applauds, choosing discipline over distraction, choosing purpose over obsession, choosing growth over resentment. Every single day, those choices become another brick in the life you're building. And here's something beautiful: the more your life begins to grow, the less interesting the old drama becomes. You stop wondering what they're thinking because you're too busy creating something worth thinking about. You stop waiting for closure because your progress becomes your closure. You stop hoping someone notices your value because you've become too focused on increasing it. One day you'll wake up and realize you haven't checked your phone looking for their name. You haven't replayed the old conversations. You haven't wondered what they're doing. Not because you forced yourself to forget, but because your future finally became more exciting than your past. That's when people often notice you've changed. Not because you announced it, because your energy has changed, your confidence has changed, your priorities have changed, and all of it began with one simple decision. You stopped feeding the drama and started feeding your future. The greatest battle you'll ever fight isn't against another person, it's against your own impulses. Anyone can react in anger, anyone can send an emotional message, anyone can let frustration control their decisions. But very few people have the discipline to pause, breathe, and choose a response instead of a reaction. That's where real power lives. Emotional discipline doesn't mean you stop feeling, it means your feelings no longer control your direction. You still experience disappointment, you still remember the good moments, but instead of allowing emotions to dictate your actions, you let your values guide your next step. Think about a captain steering a ship through a storm. The waves are powerful, the wind is relentless, and the sky is dark. If the captain panics, the ship drifts off course. But if he stays calm and focused, the storm eventually passes. Your emotions are the storm, your discipline is the compass. Every time you choose patience over panic, self respect over chasing, and purpose over distraction, you're building a mindset that no rejection can break. That's what separates emotionally strong people from those who stay trapped in endless cycles of drama. Ironically, the calmer you become, the more confident you appear. You stop needing the last word. You stop trying to prove your worth. Your peace becomes your greatest strength, and your consistency speaks louder than any emotional reaction ever could. Because the strongest move isn't reacting to every situation, it's mastering yourself before responding to it. One day, something unexpected begins to happen. The person who once seemed so certain about leaving starts wondering about you, not because you sent another message, not because you tried to convince them, but because they noticed something they never expected. You've stopped waiting for weeks or even months. They may have believed you'd eventually come back. They expected another emotional text, another attempt to fix things, another sign that they still occupied the center of your world. They assumed your life would remain on pause while they figured out theirs, then nothing, not silence filled with resentment, not silence used as a game. Just the quiet confidence of someone who has accepted reality and chosen to move forward. That's when curiosity begins to replace certainty. People often don't reflect while everything feels predictable. Reflection usually begins when the familiar disappears. They start remembering your loyalty, your consistency, your presence, and they compare those memories with the reality they're living now. But here's the important part. By the time they finally wake up, your goal should no longer be winning them back. Your goal should be becoming someone who no longer needs to be chosen in order to feel complete. You've built better habits, you've found purpose again. You've discovered peace that isn't tied to another person's decisions. Whether they reach out or never do becomes a secondary question because your life is finally moving forward instead of standing still. That's the real victory. The greatest statement you'll ever make isn't convincing someone to see your worth. It's becoming so focused on your own growth that their realization no longer determines your happiness. In the end, you'll discover something that changes your life forever. The greatest victory was never making someone wake up, it was waking yourself up. For so long, your happiness may have depended on someone else's choices. If they texted, you smiled. If they ignored you, your confidence disappeared. If they stayed, you felt secure. If they left, you questioned your worth. That's an exhausting way to live because it places your future in someone else's hands. But the moment you stop reacting, something inside you begins to change. You realize your value was never determined by another person's decision. You begin choosing yourself every single day. You protect your peace. You raise your standards. You stop chasing people who aren't willing to walk beside you. Most importantly, you stop asking, how do I make them come back? And start asking, how do I become the best version of myself? That one question changes everything. Maybe they'll reach out one day. Maybe they'll finally understand what they lost, or maybe they never will. Either way, you've already won because you've built confidence that doesn't need constant reassurance, discipline that isn't shaken by rejection, and a purpose that's bigger than any relationship. Your life is no longer waiting for someone else's approval to begin. It's already moving forward. And that's the lesson most people never learn. When you stop reacting, they may finally wake up, but by then you've already awakened to your own strength, your own purpose, and your own future. So keep walking forward with quiet confidence, protect your self-respect, and never forget this: the moment you stopped reacting wasn't the end of your story. It was the moment your real life finally began.